The history of the guitar is hazy at best, with images of guitar-like instruments dating back over 3,000 years, but no clear path of their development. However, it is thought that the early guitars had strings in pairs, much like the mandolin today, right up until the mid-1700s, when the trend towards making guitars with 6 single strings emerged in Italy and France. However, the key figure in the evolution of the modern classical guitar is Antonio Torres, who started building guitars in 1854, which had more volume and projection and an outline shape, which is now a template used by most modern guitar makers, including Rick Middleton, whose workshop we are going to visit today. The front of the guitar is made from 2 consecutive pieces of wood, which are sanded down on the centre joint so they will glue together perfectly before being cut into the outline shape of a guitar. After being sanded down so that the joint cannot be felt on the front of the guitar, it is now ready for the rosette to be attached. This is done by counting the fret spacing down the neck and gluing the rosette into place with several small drops of glue before being held down with a piece of wood and a heavy weight and left to dry for about an hour. After an hour, the rosette is traced around with a scalpel and the sound hole is drilled out. The next step in making the front of a guitar is gluing on the struts. The struts are 4.5 to 5mm square pieces of wood that will be glued onto the pencil line. To further increase the rigidity of the guitar, when the struts are glued on, they are actually forced into a depressed former, which is a disc shape, after which, once dried, the struts will be sanded down so that the ends of the struts will fade to almost nothing, because a rigid centre is needed. The process of actually bending the wood is to place the wood against the surface of the heater and to rock it gently so that the timber is warmed through, and then the wood is moved to the slightly tighter bend where it is bent and held for 15 seconds until it assumes the form of the waist bend. The sides are then placed into this clamp, which holds them into place until they cool enough not to bend back out of shape. Once the neck plank is sanded down to the right thickness, the plank is cut at about a 12-degree angle, making sure that there is enough wood to make the head from. The joint is then sanded so they fit together perfectly, glued and then clamped before being left to dry. Next, for the guitar neck, 3 pieces of spare timber are glued together so that the grain of the timber is matching and carved out to make this part of the guitar, which I call the heel. Traditionally, the next step would be to put a piece of steel rod in the neck so that the neck is more rigid and there is less chance of the neck bending under the tension of the strings. However, one of Rick's latest innovations is to use a piece of carbon fibre, which is just as strong as steel but much lighter in weight. Next comes the fingerboard, which is cut to width that partly depend on the guitarist, tending to be wider for classical guitarists than steel string players. The fingerboard is cut so that the thickest part is at the nut and the thinnest part is over the body. This fretboard has also been marked with pencil where all the fret positions are. To make the head of this guitar, this metal template is used, which has the right diameter holes at the right distance apart. This guitar head has already been cut out, but you can see where and how the holes in the head of the guitar would have been cut out using this template. Once all the correct holes have been cut out of the head, the 3 holes seen on the side are now ready for the machine heads to be slotted in. To create the smooth and shiny finish on the guitar, a synthetic modern lacquer is applied to the back, sides, neck, and head with a brush. The paint finish is then sanded with a wet and dry abrasive paper by spraying a bit of water onto the guitar and rubbing down the surface until it is even, smooth and matte. And finally, the surface of this guitar is buffed by applying a layer of buffing soap and then running it along this cotton burnishing wheel. Here is what some finished guitars by Rick Middleton look like.